Welcome to Thursfields Talk Legal, a vidcast series from one of the leading law firms in the Midlands. I'm Steve Dyson, a journalist who's talking to a range of solicitors at Thursfields on legal topics of wide interest to the public or businesses. Today's episode is called Powers of Attorney. Do you know if you should have one? And joining me online to discuss this is Annabel Kay, Head of Court of Protection and Vulnerable Client Services here at Thursfields. Hello to you, Annabel.
Hi, Steve. Thank you for having me.
Annabel, we're here to talk about powers of attorney and when and why we might need to arrange such legal processes. But I'd like to start by making sure we understand exactly what a power of attorney is. Please explain.
Sure. In short, a power of attorney is a legal document which anybody over the age of 18 is free to make. In essence, it is a legal deed, so it is an important document created by me, by us, into which you can appoint who you choose to be able to manage your property and financial affairs, or in some cases, to make decisions about your health and welfare.
That seems pretty clear, Annabel, but I have heard about lasting powers of attorney as well. Is that different, and are there any other types?
Oh, that's a great question. Lasting powers of attorney are the ones to which, I guess, as solicitors, we refer clients to most. They are made either by the client themselves or with legal support. The document is prepared, so it's in the name of the person who's going to need support at a later stage. We have the name of their attorneys there. It's signed off by all parties, including what we term a certificate provider, whose job it is to reassure the Office of the Public Guardian on registration that the person understands the document and they haven't been put under any pressure to make it. The document then goes off for registration, and once registered, it is available for use by the attorneys in the matter of property and financial affairs and for health and welfare once the client has lost capacity to make decisions for themselves. But I think it's also really important to make people aware of what we term a general power of attorney, which is a short form document. It includes the details of the person who's making the power of attorney, the details of who is going to pick up that role as attorney. It has no other safeguards attached to it in respect of a certificate provider or anybody to be notified. The document is available and to be used immediately on signature, and it has a statutory period of lasting 1 year or less, depending on what the attorney is asked to do.
Okay, I've got that in my head. But what are the main reasons for people needing to have that power of attorney?
Oh, there's endless reasons as to why I think powers of attorney should be considered. And it's easy, I guess, from my perspective, to consider why they should be in place. And I think I just want to make people aware of the fact that they are useful in so many situations. We tend to talk about lasting powers mainly, as I say. We tend to talk about them having a long scope and wide authority. And we tend to think of them, I guess, applying to people who are of an older age, sort of 60s upwards, I'd say. But there are a range of situations which can apply to younger people or people of any age, whereby we would think perhaps, don't dismiss the fact that there is the possibility of securing yourself some help if you need it. And the sort of examples can be if somebody, I've made them for people who are facing a prison sentence. I've done that twice now, so that their attorney can continue to manage their financial affairs so things don't reach a point of financial collapse while that person is serving a prison sentence. I've made them for individuals who have some sensory disabilities, blind or deaf, not able to access services for one reason or another, particularly through lockdown and being very housebound. In one incident, I prepared them for a gentleman, and we restricted the role of the attorney to dealing with specific financial problems that he was actually having. So with his council tax, credit card, banks, and with his mortgage. And one by one, we were able to deal with those. It's not necessarily straightforward, as it always isn't, but we were able to start to go through that list and start to resolve some of those difficulties. I also think that they can be useful for people who have any form of perhaps of illness, be it physical or be it mental illness. We hear a lot about people with mental illness who feel cut off and unable to access financial services like claiming benefits. And if we were able to advise these clients in a period when they're well, we might prevent some of the disasters which these clients face. So I think that they've got a range of really useful measures by which clients can access them, and there's so little known. I think general powers of attorney, and maybe we as solicitors don't talk about them enough, but I think they plug a real useful gap, and that's why I'm such an advocate of them.
They sound really useful. I want to ask you though, Annabel, how people go about getting a power of attorney, both as individuals acting for themselves or as a family member if it's a loved one who requires one for a specific reason.
Yes, I mean, I think if a family member is concerned about a relative, then that is probably the majority of the calls that I take about these. So under those circumstances, somebody will phone up and perhaps comment that their mother or father, whoever, is starting to struggle perhaps with their capacity. They're starting to become more forgetful and it's causing concern. No matter who triggers, if you like, the referral, we are always dealing with the person who makes the power of attorney themselves. So I guess we've got to have some willingness from that individual that they want to enter into a power of attorney and appoint other people to look after their financial affairs or to make health and welfare decisions. So it's always led really by the person it's going to affect, no matter who alerts us to the situation. And under those circumstances, we would want to meet with the client, we'd want to explain the document, explain the scope of its authority. We would want to ascertain from them who are going to act as attorneys and what that's going to mean. We would want to talk to them about who should presume the role of the certificate provider. Should it be a solicitor? Could it be anybody else? And it can. There are circumstances with lasting powers of attorney when you can notify individuals about the intention to register a power of attorney. It's a safeguarding measure. We can talk about that. And basically, we can bring it all together in one document and send it off for registration. That's not to say that clients are prohibited from making this document themselves. They can, but they would need to go through the step-by-step instructions on the Office of the Public Guardian website to do so. With the general power of attorney, I'm genuinely not aware of any legal stationery which gives people the right to prepare this for themselves. And I would say that under those circumstances, because it comes into effect instantly and because there are no other safeguarding mechanisms in place, and it is designed, I think, to make sure you can prevent crisis occurring or to stem it from occurring, you should probably take good legal advice in respect of that, because you are absolutely dependent on trusting your attorney.
Annabel, like any legal process or document, it can be a big worry, especially for an older or a vulnerable person who might feel they're losing control of their lives, or may even feel they're putting too much strain on other family members. How would you reassure them about those kind of worries?
Well, you know, it's a legitimate concern for many people to think that they're losing control over making decisions, and that they have attorneys in place who would honour what their thoughts and wishes and decisions would be if they can't say for themselves. And in many ways, you can only allay some of those fears by encouraging a client to think carefully about who they appoint. In respect of people being in a position where they can take over another person's finances completely, whilst it may not be an entirely satisfactory measure, the power of attorney for property and financial affairs does allow attorneys to begin to deal with somebody's financial matters, but they should do so, of course, in consultation with the person that they are assisting. And that person doesn't then lose their rights to engage in their banking themselves, for example, or anything else for that matter, even the simple things like signing off a cheque. But what I would say is that any form of management, but of another person's financial affairs, is always going to be contingent on the banks, building societies, etc., understanding how you are doing so. So that's a very important thing to advise clients of. I think that there's a real piece to be had about the fear of losing control. I think this particularly might apply to younger people who might assume that they should be able to be in control of their own lives for one reason or another, like we all should. But there may be difficulties which sometimes prevents that. For example, as I've said, the risk of potentially facing a prison sentence. It's not going to apply to everybody, but it will apply to some people. People living with difficult to control illnesses, which mean that there are times when they physically or mentally can't carry out whatever duties need to be undertaken in respect of their finances. And I think by having something like a general power of attorney in place in those circumstances, you can give that reassurance that this power of attorney is not forever, it is temporary. We can even limit the scope of it if necessary. So I would hope that that would allay some fears. And I think generally, really, we like to advise people that these documents are there to assist in very difficult times. They're not perfect. Very few legal measures are ever perfect, but legal measures can plug some of the more difficult situations that can come up in life. And I think if people are under any doubt about whether or not a power of attorney applies to them, they just need to get in touch with a solicitor and talk it through.
Finally, Annabel, you've touched on many different reasons why powers of attorney are needed, but I'd just like you to summarise the main benefits, again for an individual, but also for family members.
Well, I think for individuals, having a well-crafted, well-thought-out power of attorney in place can be invaluable. After all, the point of them is to allow trusted people to be able to make decisions on their behalf if they cannot do so for themselves. We tend to think about them only being of use to people who've lost mental capacity, and I guess that's when they have the most bite. But they're also incredibly useful for people who have capacity, but may have a physical illness, which means that they can't go about things for themselves and they need others to do it. Or they're in a set of social or economic circumstances which they really need assistance with, and they need someone to help pull them out of that crisis. And a power of attorney will permit somebody to do that. And in that regard, rather than struggling and things becoming worse, I would really want to advocate that there is help out there for individuals through the use of powers of attorney. It need not be forever, it can be temporary, it can be contained to what it is as you as an individual may want, but it can certainly help people to get out of a very difficult position. For health and welfare, it perhaps provides the confidence of knowing that people will make decisions on your behalf in relation to care and social care needs, which you might not be able to articulate for yourself. And I think for family members, knowing perhaps that they hold that document for a loved one means that they are in a position to make these decisions, to be included in decision making in a way as if they were the person that they're assisting. And I think that can be absolutely critical for many people, both from a financial perspective, be it long-term under a lasting power, long-term for health and welfare, or short-term for property and financial matters under a general power of attorney. To have that ability to help somebody that you care about is invaluable.
Annabel Kay, Head of Court of Protection and Vulnerable Client Services here at Thursfields. Many thanks for joining us on Thursfields Talk Legal.
You're welcome.
Hopefully what Annabel had to say about powers of attorney is something people will find really useful. Anyone wanted to find out more can contact Annabel via 0345 2073 728 or by emailing her direct at ak@thursfields.co.uk. We'll be back soon to talk to more legal experts here at Thursfields about other interesting aspects of the legal world. Thursfields Talk Legal. Thanks for listening.